Welcome to Marriage IQ, the podcast for the intelligent spouse.
I'm Dr. Heidi Hastings.
And I'm Dr. Scott Hastings.
We are two doctors, two researchers, two spouses, two lovers, and two incredibly different human beings coming together for one purpose: to transform the stinky parts of your marriage into scintillating ones, using intelligence mixed with a little fun.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Marriage IQ. We are so excited to see you this week. We hope you've had a great weekend. We hope that you're living your most scintillating life together. And we're just so happy to have you here again today, coming back, learning more about how to live a more scintillating life.
We're really excited this week to have Mark and Janie Ogletree with us. Dr. Mark Ogletree was raised in the great state of Texas.
Yeehaw!
Yay! He earned a master's degree in mental health counseling and a PhD in family and human development, both of which really qualify him to come and share some of his great wisdom with us. Mark worked for 20 years teaching in both Arizona and Texas, two states that we've spent most of our marriage in. And for the past 15 years, he's been a university professor teaching about family issues. Additionally, Mark has worked in private practice for over 35 years as a marriage and family therapist. He's published a plethora of books and articles on marriage and family relationships, and it was really hard to just pick a couple of topics to have him discuss with us today. Some of his books that I was really drawn to were Anxiety is Your Superpower, The Making of a Man, Finding Peace in Difficult Times, and I love this one, Babysitters Are Cheaper Than Divorce.
That's true. I believe that.
True.
Our whole marriage, every week, that Friday night, date night.
That's right.
Now, Mark wouldn't be who Mark is without his lovely wife, Janie. And she has spent much of her time, I think, raising their 8 children and 27 grandchildren. We know that is equally as important, if not more important. And so, sorry, Mark, but we're going to give her a big, huge kudos for that.
She deserves all those degrees. She's actually more of an expert than I am on any of that stuff. So
I have no initials behind my name, but he says I have street creds.
That's right. Experience often is more valuable than the degrees. So Mark and Janie are the hosts of a weekly podcast called Preserving Families. We're really excited to have them today on our show, and thank you so much for being with us. Welcome.
thank you for having us.
Thank you.
It's always great to connect with some fellow Texans.
Yeah.
There's a saying that says, I wasn't born in Texas, but I got here as fast as I can. So
That's right.
Here
I
we
think
are.
Jenny had the bumper sticker on her car.
So here on Marriage IQ, one of our 4 cornerstones is identity, just learning about who we are, who other people are, who come into our lives. And so we'd like to invite both of you just to kind of give us a quick synopsis of who you are as people and how you came to be and what prompted you to go into this field, Mark.
Yeah. For me, it's just growing up in a family where there were some struggles, right? There were some marriage problems. And I still remember the day that we learned that our mom and dad had been at a marriage counselor's office. And I thought, that's a thing. You could go do that. And I remember thinking, even as a kid in middle school, that's kind of cool. That'd be kind of a cool thing to do. But I think just growing up in that family and then seeing other great, strong families in the community where we lived, and just starting to form the idea as probably a high school kid of, I think I want to have a really awesome, strong family one day. And so just everything just always seemed to point that direction. It brought me into family therapy. At one point, it brought me into doing a doctorate degree in that area because my focus was on fatherhood. And so I really wanted to learn as much as I could about that and be the best dad that I could be. It was kind of probably selfish motive at first, but that has just always been our priority. When we were engaged, one of the conversations that came up a lot was, how many children do we want to have? How do we want to raise them? This is how crazy we were. For dates, we would go to the hospital and look at the newborn baby. Back in those days,
when there was no security and they like walk up and look at the nurse
Wow.
babies and
even now, even though we're saying that, I can't believe we did that, but we would,
You
and then
guys are
we'd
really
dream
dating
about having
yourself.
our own baby at some point, and anyway, so yeah, that's kind of how it kind of started for me. And I've just really been interested because the more research that you do, you come to understand that how valuable the family is to our society and our culture. Strong functioning families is what makes the world go. And
Oh, we agree 100%.
right.
So
So
it
now,
sounds to me like, Mark, your decision wasn't prompted by some kind of a huge trauma. I don't hear any big trauma in your life. It was just you had a decent life, kept growing up, no big traumas. You decided, hey, this is really important to me, right? I mean, that's what I'm hearing here.
yeah, yeah. I mean, grew up in the suburbs of Houston, had a great life, lived in a great neighborhood, swam at the country club pool, played all the sports and little league, and I went to an awesome high school. It wasn't that at all, but it was definitely, I can tell you one experience I had where I'd watched my dad come home from his corporate job every day, just not with a smile on his face. And
Mm.
it got me thinking that I want to do something that I'm passionate about and that I can come home smiling and still be happy about. And anyway, and so those little 10-second glimpses of life can shape the rest of your life where you just kind of think, yeah, I don't want to come home like that every day. I want to do something that I love.
I think this is a good point here to stop and pause and discuss that you don't need a huge trauma in your life to change the trajectory of your life. I think that's probably the case for a lot of people listening.
Mhm.
They haven't had these huge traumas. Maybe, maybe some have, but I'm just saying for those who haven't, uh, and they want to just take life by the horns, right? And become the best version of who they are. And that's kind of what Mark's doing. And he wants to be passionate about what he does. And so that's why we're all sitting here.
well, I'm kind of thinking I mean, his real dad died when he was 3, so this was his stepfather.
Oh,
So
Yeah, I mean there was some trauma, where our dad died when I was 3. He had been in a serious
wow.
car wreck earlier in his life, and back in those days they didn't screen blood when they gave blood transfusions, and so he was given blood full of hepatitis, and so he actually
Ah,
died of liver failure at the age of 33. And
wow.
so yeah, so I grew up with a single mom with two of us were just, yeah, my brother and I were young. I was 3, he was 1.
Wow.
Um, and then my mom did remarry, and their marriage was a little rough and rocky, and so I think some of those early on experiences definitely pointed me in a direction where I just became very interested in families that functioned at a high level. I saw a lot of that around me as well growing up, and just always wanted to have a great family. It never was really as much about a profession as it was just my own personal life, that I hoped we would be a great, awesome family that can make a difference in our community and where we lived. And so that's kind of how that started.
I love that. Janie, how about you? Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to be a mother of 8 children. That's incredible. That is a lot.
it is a lot. Well, I'm the oldest of 8. I grew up an
Okay.
oldest daughter, 4 boys and 4 girls, and I loved having a big family. I thought it was so fun. It was always a party. There's always somebody to do something with. My mom was kind of super mom, could do all things, just always had an immaculate house. We always had fresh meals from scratch on the table. That's so not me, but that was her. And so I grew up thinking that was normal, and she made it look easy.
Wow.
And it wasn't easy for me, but I loved having the children. So when I met Mark and I felt his passion for family and knew that he would be a great father and a great husband and that he just wanted a great family too. I think, okay,
Our worlds collided
yeah,
a little bit. And it worked out well.
he's my guy.
That's
And I mean,
mm.
originally we thought, oh, we want 12 children is what we started out with. And with every child, it got less and less. But we got
That's with
twins. We
everyone,
had
right?
twins, so that sped things up a little bit. But yeah, so we have 7 daughters and 1 son. And
Wow.
so we were so grateful to get that son. We kept trying for another one, and then the Lord just kept sending us daughters. So, but at some point we had to quit.
So we have to reveal here, I have 7 girls in my family and 3
Really?
boys. 3 of
Wow.
them came through adoption, and Scott, they have 8 children in their family, so we both come from big families as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Big
that's
families
interesting.
are fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
I will tell you that Janie's family was so fun that when she was on dates in high school, she hates when I tell this story, but she was the original FOMO person, I think. She would talk about how all she could think about is, I gotta get home. I gotta get home.
I'm
'Cause
missing out on all the fun that's going on at home.
yeah. So she would rather be at home than out on these dates, right?
Yeah. So my parents did a great job of creating a beautiful culture in our home. Everyone wanted to be there, and the Kool-Aid house where we would bring our friends there. And
that's amazing.
my dad, everyone called him the ice cream man. Anyone who came over, he'd pull out tons of ice cream all over the counter. And
Bluebell, as you guys know, right?
Of
we,
course, that's the only one.
so we kind of came from a little opposite backgrounds, but I think we ended up seeing the world, or kind of had similar views by the time that we met, of how we wanted to create a family and go forward that way. And then now we have 29 grandchildren now, 2 more on the way, and that is the cherry on top. I think they don't
We
t
hear it's the best.
parenting is hard and rough, but grandparenting is awesome and amazing and just 100% joy. So,
We haven't experienced that yet, but we've had 3 weddings in the last 18 months, so hopefully
It's coming,
not
right?
and
too far away. Yep, that's great.
So, Mark, you've been at this for a long time. You've been counseling people for many years. What's one of the biggest things that you see in counseling married people? One of the kind of the high view, 30,000 foot view ideas that come to mind.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. And by the way, I get asked that a lot. I think people are really interested to know, okay, what is that one thing? And surprisingly, I would tell people it's actually so unique. I mean, there's probably for me in the practice I run, there's not just one specific thing that just sticks out above everything else,
Mm,
but there's definitely some themes, and one of them for sure is that people are so busy today. That they're
mm.
so busy that they don't have time, or they're not taking the time to invest in the marriage or in parenting, to be honest with you. And so the way that we make that up is, okay, we're going to go have some fun in some way. So parents are having a lot of fun with their children, but a lot of children aren't being taught the values of work and some of the core values of honesty and obedience and things like that. But in a marriage setting, I would say definitely almost everyone is fighting for this time balance, right? They're just trying to
Mm.
figure out how to fit it all in and not have their marriage be last on the list.
So what are some of the most common ways that couples unintentionally drift apart through time scarcity? I guess we can call it time scarcity. I've seen you use that term in some of your writings and research.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I'm gonna tell my wife to chime in anytime you want to, because she has the good Cracker Barrel wisdom. But sometimes we see people getting hyper involved in work, right? And so we know that men and women who work now travel a lot more. I don't remember my dad ever going on a business trip except maybe once a year, where people do that now every week. In fact, when
Yeah.
we lived in Dallas with you guys, we were very aware that our neighbors were leaving on Monday morning and flying in on Friday evening, and that
Right.
was a typical work week. And so now we have that. We're trying to balance the work schedule. We're trying to balance children's activities, which are more crazier now than ever. I remember growing up as a kid in Texas, and we had a little league baseball game once or twice a week or whatever. But now we're on club teams and we
Yep.
travel. I mean, we're aware of,
multiple children, not just
yeah, I think multiple children, and we just had my wife's brother was just telling us that they were just in South Carolina for one of their kids' baseball tournaments, and they live out here in the West with us. I mean, this is the new culture we've created of just this crazy ultra busyness. And now maybe there's no more, I don't know, maybe there's more work at school. The idea with all the technology now that was supposed to make our lives easier has now made it more complex, because now I can be in my home office answering emails like last night at 11 o'clock at night, right? And so they call it the global village, but it just expanded. The time demands have expanded more than ever.
Well, I think in some ways, though, all of these conveniences that we have now, I think we should probably take a moment and say, I can do a lot more than I used to. I can get through a whole lot more information faster. I can become a better physician because I have more knowledge at my fingertips. Uh, News on down the line. The type of glasses I have, the grocery stores we go to, it's all pointed toward making our lives more efficient. And yet, I guess if we don't acknowledge that, all of our free time is being taken up, right? We're not gonna we're not gonna stop and say, "Whoa, wait a minute. We got to take some time here." Right?
Because you can become obsessed with the technology. In other words, it's one thing to have now we can make plane reservations, right, on our phones. So that's incredible. But now why am I on my phone at 3 in the morning making a plane reservation? I could have done that 4 hours ago, but we're becoming obsessed, I think, with some of the technology. But you're right. The technology has made our lives incredible. Scott, to your point of your profession, I can now write a chapter for a book in a day easily, where it used to take a month. I don't have to go to a library anymore. I can use artificial intelligence help for research. We have research at our fingertips.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing.
But none of this translates to better marriages, though,
Right.
right? Is that what you're seeing?
I love this term coined by a great researcher out of the University of Illinois. Technoference is what they call it in
Mhm.
marriage. That there's so much technoference today, and we see it. We see evidence of husbands and wives who aren't communicating that well because they're both on their phones. We've seen those pictures and those memes of the couple laying in bed at night together, and they're both on their phones facing the opposite direction.
Yeah.
We see children tugging at their parents' shirts and pants, trying to get their attention, but mom or dad are on their phone. So technoference is alive and well, right?
Yeah. Janie, from your perspective, do you think all of this busyness, that part of it might be focusing on the children more than on the marriage?
Absolutely. I really do. And I
Wait, no.
We can't say that.
No, you're supposed to pay attention to your children, honey.
we
You're
are
supposed to love your children.
Yeah.
we are. We're supposed to love our children, but I think in a lot of families the children are the center and we go around the children, where it should our world should revolve around the marriage.
Wait.
Why?
This is a radical concept. Janie, can you please repeat that for our audience?
Yes, our children are not the universe, the center of our universe, or should it be? I mean, there was back, many, many years ago where children were supposed to be seen but not heard. But now I really feel like our culture has changed where the children are
Yeah.
all of a sudden now rule the roost. They get to pick what restaurants we go to. They get to rule and make the rules in the house.
They decided where the vacation's going to be. In fact, there's great historical stories of the children looking through the keyhole into the kitchen, watching the parents with other adults eat dinner. Can you imagine that now?
Day.
I totally remember that. Except it wasn't through the keyhole. It was at the top of the stairs. We would be peering down, watching my
Yeah.
parents and their friends eat
Yeah.
dinner.
Yes. And now it's us peering down, watching our kids and all their friends, take
Yep.
over the house, and us hoping that maybe we can get in bed by 1 o'clock tonight.
Definitely
So
a child-centered
yes,
society, right?
So,
yeah.
what is your reasoning that marriage should be the center relationship, the primary relationship instead of the role as parents?
You can't have a stronger family than you have a marriage, right? Everything comes out of the marriage. I love the quote from the Roman orator Cicero that marriage is the first bond of society.
Mm.
As the marriage goes, so goes the family, but also so goes what? Our world.
Society.
Yeah, the world that we live in. And so everything kind of comes out of that
I love that.
union. That's the central piece to all of it.
Okay, so this is gonna, I think, take a lot of people a lot of time to wrap their head around this idea.
Although we've talked about the same
We've
thing
talked
in
about
other
it,
episodes.
yes, in other episodes, but I think to intentionally put the marriage first, right? How does that look?
How do you do that?
We love the word intentional. We use that a lot in our home. We use it a lot on our podcast too, because I think it doesn't just magically happen. Nothing magically happens. You have to be intentional, and you have to be intentional about your marriage, keeping it the soil fertile,
Mm,
keeping it growing, making sure that you set aside time for that, or it will just, your time will just get sucked away.
everything will take over. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a book by Bill Doherty. I don't know if you guys are aware of him. He's so great. He's just
I think it
uh,
might be the book I have.
Take Back Your Marriage. But he's the one that said we didn't do everything right as a couple. We didn't do everything right as parents. But he said, but the one thing we did that was right was that we taught our children that in the solar system of the family, that our marriage was the sun and that
Mm.
everything went around that they were the planets that were far out there and that they were not going to be the center of the family. And I think that's probably what the stake in the ground that every couple has to, lay down and drive in with their hammer a little bit to make a claim that, you know what, we're even gonna set some boundaries with our own kids. And now we may have to set some boundaries with our adult children because we have to make time for ourselves every so often. We've got to renew and strengthen our own marriage.
I love that. So we've talked about how the busyness factor of children can cause this time starved marriage and how the busyness of technology and work can also contribute to that. So, what are some of the antidotes to creating intentionally a marriage that can surpass all of the busyness that the world that we live in now presents to us?
Again, it's being intentional. It's carving out, maybe having a small meeting saying, okay, here's what our week is looking like. But Friday night, we're going out, just the two of us. So and so needs a ride to their ball game because we're going on a date. Or, hey, let's take a vacation 2 months from now. Let's get that plan, but we're spending time for us. I think it's that intentionally, again, because if we don't, it's not going to happen.
It isn't, yeah, it gets creeped upon. Our time gets just sucked away. I love what you said. Another thing, back to Bill Doherty, he's really big on rituals. If we don't have rituals in our marriages, we're going to lose them because the time factor is so massively invasive today. If we don't have rituals to hold our marriage together, it's just not going to last. And so he talks about several types of rituals. One is a greeting ritual. So there's a lot of these things are small and simple, right? It's not going on a cruise or anything. It's the simple thing of that we don't leave the house before we hug and kiss each other and have some kind of form of affection. It's a connection ritual where we talk every day or go on walks. His prescription, which I've always loved, was every couple should have a hot tub, which I thought was great. I think every
You
couple
haven't done that.
yeah, I think every couple should have a boat, but a hot tub is just as great. But he said that was one of their rituals is that every night at 10 o'clock in Minneapolis, Minnesota, they would go out on their deck, listen to jazz music, talk
Oh,
about their day, and sit in the hot tub together. And
I love
Well, I
it.
guarantee you, if I lived in Minneapolis, that's what I would be doing.
I could get behind that easily.
Most people do have at least a bathtub.
We can start small, right?
Yeah,
And work up.
right.
But some kind of rituals of connection and greeting and of communication, how we talk together, how we make time for each other. And these are all, once again, simple. These are simple acts of, I can call my wife every day from work to check in, just little things like that.
Yeah.
I think that's how we reclaim our marriages.
We heard the story recently of a man who, when he'd come in the house, he would go find his wife first before he did anything, before he greeted any of the children. He'd go find his wife, kiss her, and then go find the kids. And they knew that. They knew that mom was the priority, and then they came next. But I think that just setting those little subtle examples.
Yeah, connecting points.
I love the example, Janie, that you gave about holding a little meeting. And we did an episode on what we call couples councils that we do every week. And that really is to us the key to being intentional, to plan some of these things like you're talking about.
We've had some people accuse us of living a corporate marriage.
That's right. Because we have so many meetings.
If you don't use a PowerPoint during that meeting, you should be okay, right?
I thought, thank you.
Right.
And here's the thing. I think that consistently showing up for these meetings every week, it makes a difference. It's not something that is corporate, in my opinion.
It's intimate.
It's building intimacy. It's being intentional.
It's shared power.
And here's the thing, Mark. All these things you talked about, these rituals are really important. We totally support that as well. there will be times, I know this because it happens to me, and I teach this stuff, where I don't want to text my wife during the middle of the day because I'm ticked off or I have something else going on that's I'm really busy or whatever. You fill in the blank because I'm a human and we all have our moments. Or I don't want to hug my wife or I forget to do that, which probably happens the most of the time. I just simply forget. I think it's important to take the moment for everyone listening to say that's okay. That happens. That happens to the best of us. And that's why we have these councils, like you said, these meetings, is so we can get back on track because life is like a wave. And sometimes we're going to be really like, let's do this thing, you know? And then a week later, it's everything. Let's wait, what were we doing again? And so by putting in these obligatory, mandatory little powwows, touch
Course
points.
correction meetings. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
you talked about the phone call or a lot of times if I can't call Heidi during lunch, I'll just send her a little emoji that has little hearts around it.
Yep.
And that's all it takes.
Yep.
That's all it takes. 1 second. Boom, boom. And she knows I love her.
You're thinking about me.
Yeah,
You love me.
So anyway, just a little pause there because I love what you're saying. I know a lot of people get excited and then life happens, right? Again, it's this wave, the frequency of life. And we get back on, get moving again, say, oh yeah, boom.
And I think that's so crucial because we live in a world that's pulling families apart and marriages apart. And so if we think that we're just going to not do a thing and just kind of sit in our boat and just go where the river takes us, so to speak, that doesn't end up in a great place. We have to fight for our marriages and our families every week. And one of the great ways to do that is how you guys are talking about just having a little couples meeting, couples council every week, just to make sure that we're staying on track.
And I love what you were talking about too, because I mean, none of us are going to be perfect, but we're not shooting for perfection. We're just shooting for trying to be consistent and intentional. I think, and we always laugh too, because we try to have those meetings, but we are so busy that sometimes we can't even get a meeting in because we're being pulled in so many directions, And so I know we just keep fighting. You just have to keep fighting and fighting.
Fight for your marriage.
Yeah.
Are there any warning signs for those couples who are hearing this and saying, I wonder if that's me? Are there any warning signs that this might be an issue, this time-starved territory?
I think that's just about every marriage, honey.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, Heidi, my answer to that would be I think when you start noticing the apathy, when you're just not connecting and you're really in this sterile type relationship, and you realize that the intimacy part of your life, the affectionate part, the emoji part that you just talked about, Scott, it's just kind of died off and waned, and you just find yourself not even caring that much. That'd be one of the things I would say that we have to guard against so much is just the feeling of apathy that could creep in. I don't know, Janie, if that sounds right to you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
It does.
that's really good.
Another bad sign is if you don't miss each other when you're away, right? One of you goes away on some kind of trip and you're like, yeah, that was awesome. That's not a good sign, right? For your marriage.
We are at the end of our time here for this part of our episode, but we would like to invite our listeners to keep listening because we're going to talk about how time-starved marriage can impact and be impacted by some mental health issues. Since Dr. Mark Ogletree has been working as a marriage and family therapist for 35 years, he has a lot of great experience, both professionally and personally, with this topic. And so we invite our listeners to hang tight and watch Friday, where we continue this topic of time-starved marriages and how that is impacted by mental health. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Thanks so much, both Janie and Mark, and hope our listeners will join us for part 2. So everybody, that's a wrap for this episode of Marriage IQ.
And remember that the intelligent spouse knows a scintillating marriage starts with first changing themselves.
And if you want to know more, join Marriage IQ on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
And grab your free ebook. Sign up for exclusive tips at marriageiq.com. And please, please, please take a moment to rate, subscribe, follow Marriage IQ wherever you listen or watch. We'd love that. Email us at hello@marriageiq.com and we will answer you.
And we would love to hear suggestions that you have for future episodes as well. Invite your friends and family to join the Marriage IQ community too. So everybody, we'll see you next time on another exciting episode of
Marriage IQ.